Let's talk about self-focus technique because it's a very important technique in psychosexual therapy. It's one of the basic techniques that we use to treat different types of sexual function issues. And the purpose of this technique is to teach a person to get familiar with their body. And regardless how simple it might sound, it's a very challenging technique. And some people don't even realize how challenging it is until they start doing it. And for some people, it takes some time to get this technique. So let's look at this technique in detail. Like I said, this technique is used to treat different types of sexual function issues. But the interesting thing about this technique is that the goal of this technique is not to experience any sexual arousal or climax. The goal of this technique is not to expect absolutely anything, is not to experience absolutely anything, is not to have any expectation from yourself at all. And this is actually the secret of it, because when I tell my clients to do this technique, quite often the feedback that I have is that they felt absolutely nothing. Or they had expectations, but those expectations were not met. The difficulty of this technique is that you're not expected to meet any expectations. You're not expected to achieve any excitement or any sensations. You are expected to be grounded. Your mind has to go back to its body. You return your mind to the sensations, to the natural feelings, natural response, natural body response of your sensations. So when somebody touches your hand, for example, if you are alive and if you are in kind of sober, reasonable state of mind, you would experience touch. And this is the purpose of this technique. Connect to your sensations. Realize that here I am now, I am present. This is what I experience. That's it. The problem is that a lot of people have detachment, their mind detached from their body. And that is the problem, the cause of many sexual function issues, when mind is detached from the body. So when mind is somewhere else, wandering, over-expecting, spectatoring, living up to the imagination, living to some fantasies. And that's when people lose on what their body feels. So the purpose of this technique is get your mind back, get your mind home. Home means its body. So let's just look at the technique. The technique itself is hierarchical. And what it means is that you start from the smallest, simplest action. And then you extend the area of touch, the time, the period of time you use to touch, and obviously the sensations as well that you will be experiencing. So first you start with non-sexual areas of your body. And if you have really anxious mind, then it's important to start the smallest amount of time you can handle without thinking, without worrying, without thinking, being present. So if you're able to hold it for 5 minutes without wandering, without having those, invading thoughts, then put your phone on a timer for 5 minutes. If it's too much for you, and for some people it is, put it for 2 minutes. hold it for as long as you can and then extend that time up to 15 minutes. Some people can do it 15 minutes straight away, no problem. So obviously you have to check yourself what is your ability to have your empty mind for what amount of time. So while you're having your empty mind, you are touching non-sexual areas of your body. Non-sexual areas, I mean hands, face, legs, so areas that you won't feel sexual excitement. And while doing that, make sure that you are being present. So you realize that I'm actually here, I'm doing this now, I have these sensations, and these sensations, the pressure, the temperature, and the texture of the surface. Some people have really high expectations when it comes even to these basic instructions. So say if I say you should experience texture of the skin, for some people in their imagination, texture means something else. But texture could be smooth, texture could be hairy, texture could be rough. So it depends on what type of zone are you touching in your body. This is what texture is. Then when it comes to temperature, even like experiencing normal body temperature for some people would mean nothing. So what is important here is to understand that if you're not dead, you should experience touch, sensations, even if they are not strong sensations. You should experience some type of temperature, whatever temperature of your body is, and of course the texture of that area of your body, that skin that you're currently touching. And it's important to be present and not to have expectations. So when you feel that during this exercise your thoughts start to invade or your mind starts to go into anxiety mode, saying, hey, what are you doing? We have to finish report, or we have to do something, or there is a deadline, or why are you wasting your time? That's when you need to shut it down and tell yourself that you have 5 minutes, and these 5 minutes you're going to dedicate to this exercise. So the first week of this touching exercise will be dedicated to non-sexual areas of your body. So those body parts that when you touch them, you are not feeling sexually aroused. If you manage to continue with the touching exercise 3-4 times per week, and you are able to concentrate for about 10-15 minutes with no thoughts in your head, then you can move on to the next step of this exercise when you're going to involve water. So you can do this in the shower. You can experiment with your skin, non-sexual areas of your skin, while it's being wet, and you can either apply water while having shower or bath, or you can apply maybe body lotion or oil. So it's up to you. And then you can experiment with dryness. So when you dry your skin, you can feel what's the difference between wet skin and dry skin. If you are able to be present and fully involved in the process while doing these 2 exercises, first with dry skin and second with wet skin, then you can move on to sexual areas. So you can involve sexual areas of your body and again do exactly the same thing. You are not expecting arousal, you are not expecting climax while touching your genitals or touching your chest or nipples or other sexual areas in your body. Maybe you have other sensitive areas. When you are touched, you get aroused normally. In this case, you're not expecting to get aroused. You're just connecting to sensations. And when you go to the third stage of this exercise, I would advise you to start with first stage. With first stage, when you start with non-sexual areas, connect to them, and then you move on to your sexual areas. Again, quite important to track your thinking process, what your mind does during this exercise. Is there still anxiety kicking in? Are they still invading thoughts? Is there still tension? What's happening there? Or are you able to glide into the process with no over expectations, with no thoughts, with no negative thinking? So all these things you can discuss with your therapist during sessions.